At Starbound, we tell stories the human way, not with artificial voices or AI slop. Because, after all, what's HFY without humanity? Subscribe to keep it that way. I'm Johnny. Let's begin. The Federation had a word for every predator in the galaxy for both practical and cultural reasons. Practically, it kept the bureaucratic machinery running, aiding in matters like solving interspecies crimes. For instance, who else could have eaten the little alien but the Gluttums? Culturally, it was a tradition. We've been giving one-word code names to species since forever, so why change it? The incident that first created a good reason to change this ancient practice happened when the naming committee of the Galactic Federation first stumbled across a species called humans. The committee had been operating smoothly for millennia, cataloging every predator species, the Rippers, the Crushers, the Devourers, each name capturing the essence of how that species hunted, killed, or dominated. But humans broke the pattern in ways no one could have predicted. Bashar remembered that day with crystalline clarity, the way trauma tends to etch itself into memory. He and his team, Ver and Zenur, had been dispatched to a backwater planet called Elab-2 after receiving reports of a violent incident involving a human. They'd approached the assignment with their usual confidence, datapads ready, minds prepared to observe, analyze, and categorize. They'd named dozens of species before. How different could humans be? The moment they entered the crime scene at the Stellar Rest Inn, that confidence evaporated like morning mist under a harsh blue star. Instead of that typical burst of creativity and inspiration with each of them suggesting a single word to be assigned to humanity, each of them swallowed hard and froze in place. They stood there, three Brenners, caught in a tableau of horror. Their bipedal forms, not unlike that of a human but with purple skin, went rigid. The single bioluminescent stripe that adorned each of them, starting at the tip of their nose, crossing the top of their head, and traveling all the way down their spine, flickered uncertainly. Though their glow didn't change color to convey emotions like some species, it almost faded entirely at the sight of brutality around them. Ver was the first to move, though move was generous. He stumbled forward, his stripe glowing erratically as he approached the couch where one reptilian lay dead. The creature's scaled head was submerged in what had once been a decorative aquarium, now shattered around the edges where desperate claws had scraped for purchase. Water had long since drained onto the synthetic leather, leaving behind colorful alien fish that gasped their last on the wet cushions. "This is..." Ver's voice cracked, his usual analytical tone giving way to something approaching panic. "They drowned him in an aquarium. Do you understand what that means? These reptilians can hold their breath for 5 minutes. Someone held him down for all that time. Someone had the patience, the determination, He trailed off, unable to find the word. "It's impossible. No predator we've cataloged shows this level of deliberation," Zenur supplied, though his voice was hollow. He'd moved to the window, his stripe so dim now it barely illuminated his own face. "Look at this one." Bashar forced himself to join his colleague, though every instinct screamed at him to flee. The body near the window was perhaps the most disturbing, not for its gore. There was surprisingly little, but for its ingenuity. The reptilian's own tail, thick and muscular, designed by evolution to be a weapon, had been wrapped around its neck like a rope. The creature had been strangled by its own appendage, forced into an impossible position where its own strength became its doom. "What do you even call a species that does something like this?" Zenur asked, his composure cracking. "The Ironics, the Turners, the Mirror Killers." He laughed, a sharp hysterical sound. Maybe we need more than one word for once. Your own worst enemies, they kill you with your tail. The attempted humor fell flat, dissipating into the oppressive atmosphere of the room. Bashar hardly heard him. His attention had been captured by something even more incomprehensible. Near the overturned table, 3 reptilians lay in a heap, their bodies showing minimal external damage except for small, precise wounds. He pulled out his hand scanner, the device beeping as it analyzed the corpses. The results made him blink twice, certain the machine was malfunctioning. He ran the scan again. The same result appeared on the screen, mocking him with its mundanity. "Pencil," he whispered. "What?" Ver turned from his study of the drowned reptilian. "They were killed with a pencil, a writing implement. 3 of them." Bashar's stripe flickered rapidly, a sign of extreme distress. "The human killed 3 armed reptilian mercenaries with a tool designed for making marks on paper." The 3 of them stood in the center of the carnage, their lights creating a small island of purple illumination in the death-filled room. For several minutes, none of them spoke, each processing what they were seeing in their own way. Finally, Ver broke the silence. "So what do we call them? The improvisers?" "Too limiting," Zinner countered, his analytical mind finally engaging despite the horror. "Look at the variety here. This isn't improvisation, it's adaptation. The adapters." "Every species adapts," Bashar said, shaking his head. "There is something else. This is turning the environment itself into a weapon. The environmentals." "Sounds like we're naming a conservation group," Ver muttered. He gestured at the drowned reptilian. "What about the persistent? 5 minutes to drown one of these things shows incredible persistence." "But that doesn't capture this," Zinner argued, pointing at the tail-strangled corpse. "That's not persistence, that's poetry. Dark, twisted poetry. The poets." "The Federation will laugh us out of the chamber if we submit poets as humanity's predator classification," Bashar said. They continued to debate, their voices growing more animated as they fell back on their training, using the familiar rhythm of academic discourse to shield themselves from the reality of what they were witnessing. "Consider the fangs," Ver said, referencing a species they'd classified decades ago. "We named them for their primary weapon, simple, direct, but humans don't seem to have a primary weapon. They make weapons out of everything." "The spikes were similar," Zinner added. "They could extend spines from any part of their body, but even they were limited to their biology. Humans transcend biological limitations." "Remember the blades?" Bashar interjected. "We spent months debating whether to call them blades or slicers, but at least with them, every kill looked the same. This..." He gestured around the room. "This is chaos given form." "The chaos?" Ver suggested, then immediately shook his head. "No, that implies randomness. This is deliberate." "The deliberators," Zinner tried. "Makes them sound like a committee," Bashar replied. They went through dozens of possibilities. The versatiles, the infinites, the unconventionals. Each name captured some aspect of what they were seeing, but failed to encompass the whole. "What about the poisons?" Ver said suddenly. "When we classified them, remember the debate? Some wanted to call them the venoms, others the toxins, but we settled on poisons because it was broader, covered more ground." "But even the poisons have a consistent methodology," Zinner argued. "They poison. That's what they do. Humans... I don't even know what to call what humans do." "The elbows showed similar creativity," Bashar mused, referencing a species that had developed enlarged, hardened elbow joints for combat. They could strike from unexpected angles, use unconventional attack patterns. But even they were limited to their elbows. Ver's frustration was mounting. Humans use everything. The environment, their tools, their victims' own bodies. How do you condense that into a single word? The debate continued for another hour, their voices echoing in the death-filled room. They pulled up historical examples, referenced obscure classifications, even delved into extinct predator species from the archives. Nothing fit. Finally, Bashar raised a hand for silence. We're not going to solve this standing in a crime scene. We need more information. We need to understand what happened here, why it happened. We need to interview the human who did this, or at least the enforcers. The inn staff, anyone who can help us with our impossible task of reducing humanity's brutality to a single word. Ver nodded slowly. The inn staff would be a great place to start. They might have seen what led to this. Agreed, Zinner said. Though I doubt anyone who witnessed this would be eager to talk about it. They filed out of the room, their stripes gradually returning to normal luminescence as they left the immediate presence of death. The hallway of the inn seemed almost cheerful by comparison, with its worn carpet and flickering lights speaking of normal wear and tear rather than violence. They descended the stairs slowly, each lost in their own thoughts. The reception area was mostly empty, the few patrons present studiously avoiding eye contact with anyone who might be investigating the incident upstairs. Behind the desk stood an Aziri, her pink-hued skin standing out in a way that made her seem to glow from within. Pointed ears, a characteristic of her species, moved nervously as they approached, and her large green eyes darted between them and the stairs they'd just descended. Her delicate features, which might have been considered beautiful by many species standards, were drawn tight with anxiety. Excuse me, Bashar began, trying to project calm authority. We need to ask you some questions about the incident upstairs. The Aziri's ears flattened against her head. I can't. Please, I don't know anything. We're not enforcers, Ver said gently. We're from the Galactic Federation. We're just trying to understand what happened. If anything, this seemed to make the Aziri more nervous. Her hands, with their 6 delicate fingers, trembled as she clutched the edge of the desk. I really can't help you. I wasn't here when it happened. Zinner pulled out his Federation badge, the holographic seal hovering in the air between them. This is official Federation business. We're not here to cause trouble for you or the inn. We just need information. The sight of the badge seemed to break something in the Aziri's resistance. Her shoulders slumped, and when she spoke again, her voice was low. You don't understand. If I talk about it, if he finds out I talked... The human? Bashar asked. He's already off-world. He can't hurt you. The Aziri let out a bitter laugh. Hurt me? He saved us. All of us. But that doesn't mean I want him coming back. The 3 Brenners exchanged glances. This wasn't what they'd expected. Please, Bashar said. Tell us what happened. Start from the beginning. The Aziri looked around the empty reception area, then leaned forward conspiratorially. Those reptilians upstairs, they called themselves the Scale Brotherhood, but everyone here knew them as the kidnappers. They've been taking off-worlders for ransom. Anyone who stayed at this inn, anyone who looked like they had family with money, they'd take them. And the local authorities? Ver asked. The Aziri's ears moved, her equivalent of a human's bitter smile. The Brotherhood owned them, bought and paid for. Everyone knew it. My father, he owns the inn. He tried to report them once, years ago. He burned down our storage facility. We got the message. Stay quiet or die. But something changed, Zinir prompted. How were they killed? The Aziri nodded. her eyes growing distant.
3 days ago, a human family checked in. Parents and a little girl. Maybe 7 standard years old. They were tourists, had that wide-eyed look of people seeing the galaxy for the first time. The father was always taking pictures with this ancient device. The mother was reading stories to the little girl in the common area. They seemed so happy.
Her voice broke slightly on the last word.
The Brotherhood took the girl yesterday morning, right from her mother's arms, in the streets. The mother screamed, fought them, but they just laughed. They'd done it so many times before, you see.
But this time was different,
Bashar said.
The mother was hysterical. The father...
The Aziri paused, seeming to search for words.
Have you ever seen a human become perfectly still? Not frozen in fear, but still like a predator before it strikes. He became very quiet, very calm. He asked me where the local enforcers were. I told him, though I warned him it wouldn't help. He just nodded and left with his wife.
And then?
Ver leaned forward, his stripe glowing with anticipation.
She spent all day at the enforcer station, but the father, he came back and just asked me one question. Where did the Brotherhood usually conduct their business?
The Aziri's voice dropped even lower.
I shouldn't have told him, but there was something in his eyes. So I told him. They used the upper floor of this inn. They paid my father for exclusive use of those rooms. And the father went upstairs,
Zinner concluded.
He went upstairs for maybe an hour. I heard screams. Then he came back down with the little girl. She was unconscious, but unharmed. Drugged, probably. He was covered in...
She gestured vaguely.
Well, you've seen the rooms.
Did he say anything?
Bashar asked.
He apologized for the mess and said he'd pay for any damages. Then they checked out and left. Their ship departed orbit within the hour.
The 3 Brenners stood in stunned silence for a moment.
How do you feel about what he did?
Ver asked, the needless question earning him sharp glances from the other 2. The Aziri's ears straightened slightly, a sign of defiance.
Those reptilians terrorized us for years. The authorities did nothing because they were paid not to. I can't say I...
But the violence,
Zinner began.
Was exactly what they deserved.
The Aziri interrupted, then caught herself.
I mean, I don't condone violence, but, well, I've said enough.
She excused herself then, claiming she had duties to attend to, though the empty reception suggested otherwise. The 3 Brenners thanked her and left the room, stepping out into the orange-tinted sunlight of Elab 2 sunset.
The task to find a single word to define humanity is going to be truly hard,
Bashar said, his stripe dim with exhaustion.
We need more information,
Ver agreed.
The local authorities might have a different perspective.
They decided to walk to the police station, using the 10-minute journey through the backwater planet's capital city to process what they'd learned. The streets were largely empty, with only a few locals hurrying past with their heads down. Word of the Brotherhood's demise had clearly spread, but rather than celebration, there seemed to be a collective holding of breath, as if the population was waiting to see what would fill the power vacuum. The police station was a squat, unremarkable building that had seen better days. Its walls were pocked with the scars of old graffiti removal, and several windows had been replaced with cheaper materials that didn't quite match the original construction. The 3 Brenners entered through the main entrance, their stripes automatically brightening in the dimly lit interior. The reception area was chaos. Several reptilian officers, the same species as the Brotherhood members, lounged at their desks, pointedly ignoring the small crowd of citizens waiting to file reports. The air was thick with the smoke of something that definitely violated several Federation health codes.
Excuse me, sir, Bashar announced. We need to speak with someone about the incident at the Stellar Rest Inn.
The nearest officer, his green scales dulled with age and neglect, didn't even look up from his datapad.
No comment. Investigation ongoing. Move along.
We're from the Galactic Federation,
Ver said, producing his badge. This got a reaction, though not the one they'd hoped for. The officer looked up, his reptilian features twisted in what might have been annoyance.
Federation's got no jurisdiction here. This is a local matter.
Oh, we're not here to investigate the crime,
Zinner clarified.
We're from the Species Classification Department. We need information for our records.
Classification?
The officer's confusion was evident.
What's that got to do with... What's all this noise about?
A door at the back of the room slammed open, revealing the bulkiest reptilian the trio had ever seen. His scales were a deep green that bordered on black, and he clutched a pipe that emitted smoke that definitely wasn't legal anywhere in Federation space. His badge identified him as Detective Chief Krasik.
These Federation types are asking about the Brotherhood incident,
the desk officer said. Krasik's eyes narrowed to slits.
That's an active investigation. You'll get our report when we file it with the sector authorities. Now get out.
We're not here about the investigation,
Bashar said patiently.
We're here to classify humanity, to finally give them their predator name. We report directly to the president of the Galactic Federation.
Krasik had been taking a deep drag from his pipe. At Bashar's words, he choked, coughing violently. Then, in a move that surprised everyone, he grabbed his pipe and smashed it against his desk, shattering it into pieces. The smell of the illegal substance filled the room even more strongly.
That?
He gestured at the broken pipe with shaking hands.
That was medicinal. For my chronic scale condition, completely legal with a prescription, which I definitely have. Just not on me. It's filed with the medical board. You can check, but their office is closed today, and probably tomorrow too. Actually, they're very backed up. Might take weeks to confirm.
We don't care about your pipe,
Ver interrupted. Krasik stopped mid-excuse, his mouth hanging open.
You don't?
We're from classification, not enforcement,
Zinner explained.
We just need information about the human to complete our assessment.
Krasik stared at them for a long moment, then let out a string of curses in at least 3 languages.
You mean I destroyed my pipe for nothing? Do you have any idea how hard it is to get quality dream moss on this rock? That was good stuff. I don't know when I'll be able to get more.
About the human,
Bashar prompted. Krasik slumped into his chair, which creaked ominously under his bulk.
What do you want to know?
Start from the beginning,
Ver said, pulling out his datapad.
The human family arrived 3 days ago?
Yeah, typical Taurus. The husband was some kind of engineer. The wife taught young ones. Normal people. They were here to see the sunset from the Crystal Cliffs. It's the only thing on this miserable planet worth seeing.
And the Brotherhood took their daughter,
Zinner said. Krasik's scale seemed to darken.
Look, you have to understand how things work here. The Brotherhood, the gang we call the Tails, they ran things. Had for years. They had a system. Take tourists, ransom them back, use the money to keep everyone paid off. It was... He paused, searching for words. It was stable.
You're saying you allowed kidnapping for the sake of stability?
Bashar's stripe pulsed with indignation.
I'm saying we didn't have a choice, Krasik snapped. You Federation types sit in your clean offices on your core worlds and judge us. But you don't know what it's like out here. The Tails had connections all the way up to the sector governor. We try to stop them. We don't just lose our jobs. We lose our lives.
But you could have called in Federation support,
Ver argued.
Krasik laughed bitterly. Right. And wait 6 months for an investigation team to arrive, by which time all the evidence would be gone and we'd all be dead. Very helpful.
Tell us about the human father,
Bashar redirected, taking the lead and pushing the other two behind. He came here with his wife after the Tails took the girl. The mother was upset. She broke 2 desks, shattered a containment field generator, and knocked out officers Vriss and Telik before we subdued her. The father just stood there, watching, calm as a frozen lake.
You arrested the mother?
I had to. Assault on officers, destruction of property. The father paid her bail immediately. Didn't even argue about the amount.
Then what?
Krasik's scales rippled, a sign of discomfort as every eye in the room moved toward him. He asked me, very politely, where his daughter was. I told him we were investigating, that these things took time, and we had procedures to follow. He listened to all of it, nodded, and left.
And you didn't try to stop him?
Krasik was quiet for a long moment. Arrest him for what? He was as calm as a cave lake.
What about after? I mean, after the incident.
He didn't come back here. We found out what happened when the cleaning crew called it in. By then, the human was already off-world.
You didn't pursue?
Ver asked. Krasik and every other officer in the room laughed. You think we have the budget to chase someone through space? They left the station in contemplative silence. The sun was setting properly now, painting the sky in shades of red and gold.
We're trying to find them?
Ver asked as they walked.
The human family? No point,
Bashar said.
They're long gone, and frankly, I don't think one incident is enough to make a classification anyway. So what do we do?
Zinner asked. Bashar stopped walking, his stripe glowing strong.
We go to Earth. We study human culture, their crimes, their whole history. We do this properly, thoroughly. The Federation wants a word to define them. We'll give them a word. But we're going to make sure it's the right one. That could take years,
Ver protested.
Then it takes years,
Bashar replied.
This is too important to rush. We can't risk a mistake here.
Zinner nodded slowly.
Earth it is, then. Though I have a feeling we're going to need a bigger research budget. And therapy,
Ver added.
Definitely therapy.
2 years. 2 full standard years Bashar and his team had spent on Earth and among human colonies, studying their history, their culture, their crimes. They'd read about their wars, analyzed their entertainment, interviewed their criminals and their law enforcers. They'd watched humans at their best and at their worst, seen them save lives and take them with the same unstoppable energy. Now, they stood before the enormous, adorned, ancient wooden doors to the Federation chamber, the weight of their research heavy in their datapads and heavier still in their minds. The intricate carvings on the doors, depicting the first meeting of the original Federation species, seemed to judge them as they waited for permission to enter.
Ready to show the results of our effort to the whole Federation?
Bashar asked his companions.
As ready as one can be,
Ver replied, his stripe glowing nervously.
We have the data to support our conclusion,
Zinner added, though he too seemed apprehensive.
2 years of solid research, one word that defines humans.
The doors swung open silently, revealing the deliberately darkened council chamber beyond. This was psychological manipulation at its finest. The darkness meant to humble those who entered, to remind them that they stood before representatives of hundreds of worlds and trillions of beings. They walked forward,
their bioluminescent stripes the only light accompanying them until they reached the center of the vast room. There, a single alcove was illuminated, containing the current president of the Galactic Federation, a Jellian, whose blue, translucent form rippled with each movement. President Ulos had made a special effort today, Bashar noted. The typically amorphous being had managed to maintain a roughly bipedal shape, and both of its eyes were positioned in approximately the right location on what might charitably be called a face. For a Jellian, this was the equivalent of wearing formal dress.
Bashar, Ver, and Zena of the Classification Committee.
The president's voice resonated from somewhere within its gelatinous mass.
You stand before the Federation Council to present your findings on the species designated human. You have taken considerable time with this assignment.
Yes, President Ulos, Bashar replied, his stripe brightening with formal respect. The complexity of the species required extensive research.
2 years,
the president noted, its form rippling with what might have been displeasure.
2 years for a simple classification. The ripples took 3 days. The devourers took a week. Explain.
Bashar felt the weight of unseen eyes from the darkened alcoves around them. Every species in the Federation was watching through their representatives, waiting to hear how humanity would be labeled. With respect, President, humanity is unlike any predator species we've previously classified. Our initial encounter made this immediately clear.
Proceed with your report,
the president commanded. Bashar took a breath as he organized his thoughts.
2 years ago, my team responded to an incident on a distant planet. A human father had eliminated an entire criminal organization to retrieve his kidnapped daughter. The methods employed were hard to describe.
How?
The president's form shifted, leaning forward slightly. Messy. Too much gore to describe. A murmur ran through the darkened alcoves. The representatives were listening intently.
This strange violence suggested the need for deeper investigation.
Ver stepped forward, his datapad glowing.
We traveled to Earth and spent 2 years studying human history, psychology, and behavior. What we found defied every classification model we had.
Humans, Zinner added,
have killed with everything. During their World War II, one human killed an enemy soldier with a shovel. Another used a bow and arrow alongside machine guns. In their Vietnam conflict, they used everything from high-tech napalm to primitive punji sticks. Their criminal records show deaths by musical instruments, sporting equipment, food items, furniture.
Enough,
the president interrupted.
You're saying they're versatile, so call them the Versatiles.
It's not just versatility, Bashar insisted. It's something deeper. Humans are obsessed with their own violence in a way we've never seen. They have an entire entertainment genre called true crime, where they recreate and analyze their most horrible murders for enjoyment. They make heroes out of killers in something called action movies. They have games where children pretend to kill each other for fun. Yet their murder rate is relatively low compared to many Federation species, Ver added. Most humans never kill anything larger than an insect. The contradiction, it hurts my brain to think about.
From one of the darkened alcoves, a chittering voice spoke up, probably the insectoid representative.
So they're dual-natured. Call them the duals. We considered that, Zinner replied. But it's not duality. It's a spectrum with infinite gradients. The same human who reads bedtime stories to their child will plan elaborate revenge fantasies against someone who hurts them.
They have a saying. There are three things all wise men fear: the sea in storm, a night with no moon, and the anger of a gentle man. Their history is illuminating, Bashar continued. Genghis Khan killed so many people it changed Earth's carbon footprint. But his descendants became artists and more. They split the atom for power and for bombs. They created medicines that save millions and poisons that kill thousands. They went to their moon not for resources, but because, and this is a direct quote, it was there.
The president's form was bubbling now, a sign of agitation.
Get to the point. What is your classification?
Bashar's stripe glowed with pride.
After 2 years of intense research, analysis of millions of data points, consultation with xenopsychologists, historians, and military experts, we have determined the only appropriate classification for humanity.
Which is?
The president's voice carried an edge of impatience. The three Brenners spoke in perfect unison.
Unnameable.
The silence that followed was profound. Then, like a dam bursting, the alcoves around them erupted in light and noise. Representatives from 100 worlds began speaking at once, their voices creating a cacophony of disbelief and anger.
Unnameable?
The president's form had lost all pretense of shape, becoming a roiling mass of agitation.
You spent 2 years of Federation resources to tell us they can't be named?
The trio stood their ground. Though their stripes flickered nervously under the assault of voices from the now illuminated alcoves, the chamber, which moments before had been a place of solemn darkness, now blazed with the light of dozens of species' environmental chambers, each representative visible in their outrage.
This is unacceptable,
bellowed the Crusher's representative, their massive form slamming against their containment field.
Every predator has a name. That's the entire point of the system.
2 years of expenses, calculated the mercantilian delegate, their four arms gesturing wildly with datapads. Transport costs, accommodation, research materials, all for you to tell us you've failed? The uncontrolled noise rose like a tide, washing over them in waves of indignation and disbelief. Representatives who hadn't spoken in decades emerged from their darkened alcoves to voice their displeasure. The very foundations of the chamber seemed to vibrate with the collective outrage of 100 worlds, all unified in their rejection of this heresy against the sacred order of classification. In the center of this maelstrom, Bashar, Ver, and Zinner stood like 3 purple-lit pillars in a storm, their bioluminescent stripes the only steady lights in a chaos of flashing colors and agitated forms. The debate that followed would echo through Federation history, sparking academic wars and philosophical schisms that would last generations. But for the 3 Brenners who had dared to speak the unspeakable, the path forward was swift and merciless. They were stripped of their positions before the day was out, their research sealed in the archives, their names quietly removed from the active roster of the Classification Committee. They scattered to the edges of Federation space, taking positions far below their qualifications, teaching posts on frontier worlds, research stations on forgotten moons, administrative roles in backwater systems. The Federation's message was clear. This was the price of failure. Yet time, that great vindicator, would prove them right in ways the Federation could never formally acknowledge. As the years turned to decades, humanity continued to defy every attempt at classification. They were labeled the adaptables, then the variables, then the paradoxicals. Each new name lasted only until the next incident that proved it insufficient. A human artist who ended a war with a song, a human soldier who adopted the orphans of his enemies. The Classification Committee reformed and restructured multiple times, produced increasingly complex compound words, then gave up on single words altogether, then returned to single words in defeat. Through it all, Across the vast distances that separated them, Bashar, Ver, and Zinner held to their truth with the quiet certainty of those who have seen something that cannot be unseen. Ver died first, 43 years after their dismissal, still cataloging human behavioral patterns on a mining station at the galaxy's edge. Zinner followed a decade later, his massive archive of human studies donated to a small university that would later become the premier institution for xenosociology. Bashar lived the longest, perhaps sustained by the bitter satisfaction of watching the Federation tie itself in increasingly elaborate knots, trying to solve the problem he had already solved. On his final day, as his bioluminescent stripe flickered its last, Bashar was visited by a young human nurse in the Frontier World Hospice, where he'd chosen to end his days. She held his fading hand with characteristic human gentleness, the same species that had killed 3 beings with a pencil now easing his passage with infinite care.
Is there anything you need?
She asked, and in that question was the entire paradox of humanity, the potential for both creation and destruction, cruelty and kindness, held in perfect suspension. Bashar answered with the truth, and she injected something into his arm. His stripe glowed once more, faintly, and his last thought was not of regret or vindication, but of a simple, profound certainty. They had been right. They had been right from the beginning. Humanity was, is, and would always be unnameable. The Federation never officially acknowledged their classification, but in the unofficial histories, in the whispered conversations between classifiers who had tried and failed to improve upon it, in the resigned admissions of those who had spent careers attempting to categorize the uncategorizable, the word and their 3 names persisted. Bashar, Ver, and Zinner, the ones who had seen in that blood-soaked room on a backwater planet. There would only ever be one word that captured the magnificent, terrifying truth of what humanity was. Unnameable. Forever and always unnameable.